RIP software here. We're going to go ahead and get this in full screen. So as you can see here, we have the RIP software pulled up. It's EK Print Studio Epson SCP-600 series. That'll be the name of the printer. If you renamed it anything different, it'll show up as that name. So the standard template I use is the table size of 12.5 by 16. The current platen that's on this machine is only 12 by 12, but that's okay because it does come out pretty center. But if you wanted to adjust this, I actually can adjust it for you in the text file for the RIP that adjusts the table size. It's pretty self-explanatory. But this is a shirt I've already printed, so that's why I'm just showing it on screen to show you how I got to the print that I did. If we go to the white ink underbase settings here, you can see that the level is at 2. I don't usually go to 1 because it kind of lines it up and doesn't put down enough ink. 175% on the density. If it's something that I really want streaming white on, which I'll show you the difference here in a second, I put it on 200 to 300. 300 will sometimes bleed, so I usually keep it at 200. Highlight level control, 80 to 100. I usually put it at 80 if I want like a kind of vintage print look, which is what I was going for this. Underbase choke is at 10. Bidirectional print should always be on. I don't see a reason to not have bidirectional printing on. Just print slower. It only prints one pass at a time instead of going both directions and laying down ink in both directions. The one pass print should be enabled, and enhanced should also be checked. Color layer offset lines are not important. They're actually grayed out, so you can't even adjust them. Color delay time. This machine is registered, so you don't need a color delay time at all unless you wanted to try to prevent some sort of bleeding on 2-pass mode, but I don't usually run anything other than 1 pass. Opacity contrast here, because I was afraid of it bleeding, I have it at less white ink, 20, and color contrast, -49, and what that does is it puts less ink behind the area that has black or gray ink as opposed to white ink, and then it'll fill in accordingly, which is what I'll show you here. So I also have the drop size at medium. You can have it on light if you want, and then kick it up to like 3 pass at 300% again, but because I don't really want to mess with that, I just leave it at medium. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. As you can see, this is what it's going to look like on a black garment. You can change the textile color into white or orange, or so if you click green here, for example, now you'll see what it'll look like on that color of green. And you can also define custom colors and then go in here and put your red, green, blue values, your whatever you want to do here. For this, I put it on a black shirt, so it's obviously going to be a black template. So you can also click preview over here, which is what I was getting at, and this is how you kind of adjust your underbase. So what you want to be looking for is in the original graphic here, this is a brick wall, so I wanted it to put less white ink, which you can kind of probably better see here, how it's kind of grayed out right here. It's grayed out more than, say, the white that's here and through here and in his face, Pete Nice's face. Hi, Pete Nice. And then you can obviously see that the Derelict's dialect is pure white too, and then some of that is actually gray, despite my camera not wanting to catch it. You can go through, and if you wanted to, you could put it at 0, and see now that drastically changes it to way less white ink in the brick, and more white ink still here, where it's true white in the graphic. So when you're determining if you want to have grays or whites in your graphic, you want to make sure that the white is pure white 255 for the RIP to be able to discern where the color differences are in the print, which this is how I printed it, because I wanted the brick detail to come out and not have too much detail lost into the actual shirt, or have just, pure white ink looking like it's just pure white ink on the shirt. I wanted the gray to blend in, and that's also why I have the choke at 10, so that none of that peeks out, and you'll see why that's important here in a minute. So I show you the actual shirt that's printed. We'll go ahead and do a print on video too, but so here's that. An overview of the RIP again. So when you go into the CMYK ink settings, you're going to want to have it on light ink drop size. At least that's what I run. You can play with the settings if you want to, but again, just light. Ink level 2. I don't usually put it on 1 because it kind of bangs and it'll look a little bit more accurate color wise depending on the print, If it doesn't need that much CMYK, then you know you can go ahead and put it on one. But if it really you want saturated, opaque tones in your CMYK, you definitely want to have that on too. And then ink density 50%, because this DuPont ink that I'm using in this DTG that's currently loaded in it is actually it has really good coverage, and it doesn't need that much ink to actually lay down on the graphic and come out nice. So these I just leave alone because I actually adjust my artwork in Photoshop. I don't really like getting into these settings, but lightness, what that'll do is control the overall like lightness, pastelness of the print. This will brighten up the bright tones in the print, like it'll brighten the white if you really need it to, but you don't really want to do that. That's more for CMYK, obviously, in this section. It'll overall kind of brighten up the print though, so I usually, again, don't touch that. You can do contrast too if you have a really like weird print that you want a lot of detail in, but you don't know how to separate it out in Photoshop or whatever. That's what the rip is kind of for, is just for people who don't really know how to work on their own artwork in Photoshop and get it print ready. So it is you know, advisable to go through the user manual and actually learn what each one of these settings does, especially if you're not primarily working in Photoshop and you just want to drag and drop a customer's image into the RIP software. So, and then over here you have your image settings as well, so you can scale it. Right now I have it at 10 inches. I usually adjust it by the width and the height. I usually just go height, whatever I want it to be, and then it'll automatically fill in this other number for you to the proportionate size of the artwork, which is a great feature of this RIP. Offset, this again will be from the left, so if you notice your print's offset on the platen, you just adjust this left one to 1.5, 1.3, whatever. I'm not sure actually why there's one here, so I'm going to put a 0. Oh, because it shifts it over to the side. So if you shift it all the way over to the side, this will be for like a side print, I guess, if you want it all the way on the edge of the platen. But it looks like to actually get it in the center of a 12.5 platen, it does have it adjusted automatically here, so you shouldn't have to adjust that too much unless you notice that the print's off center from the platen. The top is just how far down it's dropped from the top. You do have a nice handy ruler here too, as you can see, that goes by inches, so you can actually see pretty much what it'll look like on the platen. It would of course be 12 by 12, so it would look more, if I can get into the frame here, like this. So we would actually, you know, go up here and go 0.75 from the top, 3/4 of an inch, and it'll place it here centered already. Center adjusted is a checkbox so you can use to put it back in the center, which actually puts it at, it's that specific that it goes down to that measurement. So you're going to go 0.75, yet you do have to re-enter it every time. So last thing we're going to go over here before we would normally press print is the printer setup here. So we've got 1440 by 1440. I always use 1440 by 1440. 1440 by 1440, and then this one likes to change, so you have to click 1440 and then click OK, and it'll change every time, but you just click OK and I'll go back to that. So yeah, then it'll print perfectly on register with how the machine's already pre-configured to get CMYK only prints. Just do that. Now that would print black and gray. And then the color mode up here too, I forgot to go into. You can choose from vivid, graphics, photo. This will produce more accurate skin tones for photos, like personal photos that people do retail. Black and white, which is what I currently have it on, and graphics. So graphics is what I use for colored graphics that aren't just black and white. Because the black and white mode actually just uses black and white ink, and the graphics mode will mix in CMYK to make the black, which is fine, but it'll come out like blue and red and stuff. So anything that's just pure black and white and gray, you're fine to use this mode on. So when you're ready to print, you're going to want to press RIP for large white ink prints. So we've got the white ink on our base enabled over there. And if you have preview on by accident, it's fine. RIP will send the data to the printer so that it's not live transmitting data, which will make it a lot faster and have a lot less hiccups. And print button, of course, is for immediate printing, especially if you have a CMYK only design. If you were to take this white ink on the base box off and just do a CMYK print, you can go ahead and print it from there, but I would always recommend ripping it anyway. because it's a lot easier on the printer. And of course, when you press rip, you can see I've already ripped a couple jobs here. You can set a note for it so you know exactly what it is. If it's for comfort colors or gilded shirts, whatever settings you have the shirt for. I'll go ahead and process the image. And it says EK print process completed. You'll notice that nothing happens, so you want to go over to the file rip manager, and that'll actually bring up the rip manager where you can set how many copies you want to do. So I wouldn't recommend doing copies. I would just recommend, unless you have it perfectly timed out to your delay time in between copies, so that way you can load the machine back in time, I would just go ahead and click the derelicts of dialect that we just created in print, and I'll actually give you a rundown of the settings here too. You just want to make sure these are on 1440 by 1440. It's on sheet mode, graphics, that'll be your color setting, and these are all your ink settings here. Alright, so now you're ready.